All right, so I have Bagdonas here with me. I've been planning on doing this video. I don't know how exactly it's going to turn out, but basically what we want to do here today is we want to run through the Giants offseason hard knocks because Bagdonas, you're a Giants fan, so maybe you can, speak on some of this better than I can, but just based on what I've seen in the hard knock stuff, I don't know how to describe it other than if I was Joe Schoen, I wouldn't be able to look myself in the mirror. It's totally like, and he seems like he doesn't seem like an evil guy. Like he seems like one of these happy wanderers out there, but he's definitely a little bit ignorant. And if I was involved in that front office somehow, some way, I think they would have put me in handcuffs.
Right. It's like Breslow. You would have started swinging at him. Like,
so I want to run through. This might take a while. There's 5 episodes to go through. Each episode's like 50 minutes long. So I have notes out the ass. I don't know where you want to start. Can I at least hear from you maybe on your overall takeaways from maybe the episodes?
Well, it's pretty similar to what you kind of just laid out, Trey. As a Giants fan, if I had to say,
I'm not a Giants fan.
Well, if it added or subtracted confidence, I definitely lost confidence in the direction of this team.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
bad.
There's a lot of different ways we can go with this, but I'm excited to see.
Let's just get to episode 1 here. Let's start things out. And they do this guy no favor. Like let me start by saying this. The NFL and all these teams have full autonomy for what goes in the episode and what goes out of the episode. At any time, they could have said, hey, HBO, we don't like this scene. Cut it. Which is kind of what happened with the Jets. Like, if you really go back and watch that Jets Hard Knocks, like, we're not seeing anything. Like, we didn't really see anything of Joe Douglas. Like, we saw maybe a couple sound bites from Saleh, but we really didn't see anything from the Jet stuff. This Giants Hard Knocks thing, I can't believe he allowed some of the sins that he committed to be seen by America. Because if I had committed the same sins that he did, maybe credit to him for being honest, I don't know. But if I committed the same sins that he did, I would at least try to cover him up a little bit better than this.
Well, I would add by saying that, like, the concept is great. I think, like, kind of peeling back the curtain, like kind of allowing people to see what really goes on inside a front office is great. But obviously,
it was entertaining.
Yeah, it's entertaining for sure. But obviously, it is, especially seeing John Mara just perched in that office, and it definitely made me feel a little nervous.
I just can't believe they allowed what was being shown, and I can't imagine what we didn't get to see.
Oh yeah,
because if that's what we did get to see, I can't imagine what we didn't get to see. Like, I can't imagine it. So anyway, let's start off here with episode 1. And it jumps right into the Barkley situation. I have so many notes just off the top for Barkley. Number 1, you as a general manager, it is your job to understand the market. It is your job to understand the cards that the agent is holding. It is your job to understand what's going on around the league. And he had no fucking clue. Like, he openly admitted had no fucking clue.
Right.
At the very start of the episode, he says... At the very start of the episode, first of all, he has no idea that Philadelphia and Houston are very involved. And Philadelphia tampers. Like, that's open. Like, Philadelphia tampers. Bagdonas, I don't know if we can share this screenshot, or maybe I'll send it to you, but I knew that Philadelphia wanted Bryce Huff and Saquon Barkley 3 months ago. Like, I knew that.
Yeah.
How did you not know that? Is what I really want to know. How did he not know that a player that went to Penn State, that was a star in Pennsylvania in high school football, that the Eagles wouldn't have been interested in? Like, how did you not know that?
And he's paid all this money. He's paid all this money, and that's what we get.
He had no clue. Like, how as a GM do you not do your homework on especially an in-division team? An in-division team, he had no fucking clue that they were even going to be involved in the betting. Or in the bidding, sorry. How's that possible?
I wish it wasn't.
Just the start of the episode. He had no clue.
It's scary. And it just sets the tone like that for the rest of the episodes.
And Houston was very involved in this bidding, by the way, which
to the last moment. Yeah, to the very end of it.
Houston had a ton of money in free agency. They really needed a running back. They ranked 30th in rushing yards last year, and they were a play action pass team. They run the same offense that Kyle Shanahan runs. He had no clue that Houston was even in it. None. No clue. And going back on top of this stuff, Shane uses the line right at the start of the episode. Franchising and trading is not realistic. Why? I want to know why that's not realistic.
If he had any courage, I think he would kind of have like an open forum with the fans to kind of answer for this, because it's been done before. It's going to happen again.
Well, this is my question. This is my real question. In 2022, they paid Daniel Jones and franchised Saquon Barkley. How much did the cap go up from 2020? Well, heading into this year, how much did the cap go up? Can we pull that up on the screen? How much did the cap go up? So what they did last year, the year before, they paid Daniel Jones and they franchised Saquon Barkley, and then the cap went up enormous.
So it went up over $30 million from 2020 or 22 to 23. It went up 16.6 million.
So what he's saying is, it does make sense to franchise Barkley, and then 1 year later, when the cap goes up that much, it doesn't make sense. Where's the second order thinking here? Where's the forward thinking here? How can you do something and then say that what you did the year before doesn't no longer make sense? How's that possible? And how come, as somebody that works in the front office, did nobody even
no one's there to say that? Yeah, it's alarming. I'll close this out.
Well, I just want to know how that's possible, that you can sit there and say, well, let's franchise him and pay Daniel Jones, and then 1 year later, it no longer makes sense to do the exact same thing you just did. How's that possible?
And I'm sure there were even offers at the deadline for it.
It would have been one thing if the cap was stagnant, the cap stayed the same. We now pay Daniel Jones. Now we no longer have the money. The cap went up $30 million. Don't sit here and tell me what you did last year no longer makes sense. How's that possible?
It's malpractice. It really is just front office managerial malpractice. Salary cap, like I'm looking at COVID. All right, from 2020 to 2021, it went down 16 million. If you would have that argument you just said,
sure,
if that was the case, but
sure,
no. With another 30 million,
don't sit here and tell me, well, it doesn't make sense to franchise them. Well, how come you did it last year?
They could have easily done something too. I'm sure a team out there would have gladly, put their hat in the ring for it. But instead we have what we have today.
And then, okay, so I have this timestamp at the 5:40 mark. He says, "My job is to do what's best for the franchise." You didn't do what's best for the franchise. You didn't do what's best for the franchise, because your owner, in the same episode, he says, if Saquon Barkley goes to Philadelphia, I will lose sleep.
What's the latest? Just on the Saquon thing.
I just got a text that Chicago's driving the price up and Philly's out. I don't know if that's true or not. Which I don't know if I'll make a couple of calls. I don't even know if that's gonna happen, but
I'm gonna have a tough time sleeping if Saquon goes to Philadelphia. I'll tell you that. As I've told you, just being honest. I've been around enough players, so but he's the most popular player we have by far.
Yeah.
Don't sit here and tell me you've done what's best for the franchise, because you not only did you not listen to the owner, you laughed in his fucking face.
And his whole argument behind that was, we want to allocate some money to the offensive line. We want to get some fresh bodies in. But he's had top 10 picks pretty much every year he's been in charge, other than 2022. And he was not able to, Evan Neal has been a complete disaster, and that was pretty much his first draft pick he made. And
well, I mean, we can go and do this side note, but I have a lot of stuff here on the offensive line. How can you possibly open up the episode and say Daniel Jones didn't have a chance because our offensive line wasn't good enough, and then draft 0 offensive linemen? How does that work?
They're trying to have their cake and eat it too. It's just,
how can you sit there and say our offensive line isn't good enough and then draft 0 offensive linemen?
It's hard. It's hard. It hurts my soul, because it really makes me think, like, how in the world did Eli Manning pull 2 Super Bowls out of his ass? Like, and now
I want to stick with the Barkley stuff, just because I don't want to get too far off track. But it not only does he totally contradict himself, at the 13:45 minute mark, they are in a player personnel meeting. Joe Schoen's only line in the meeting is, Jacobs led the league in rushing, right?
Mhm.
He had to ask the question. He didn't know. So they're going through all these running backs. And the Rossetti guy, he basically says, he opens up with Zach Moss. He opens up with Devin Singletary. And the only logical explanation for why the team should be interested in him is, quote, had him in Buffalo.
It's not going to cut it.
How are you making roster decisions just based off of the fact that you know the person? When the owner is telling you, I will lose sleep if we lose our best player to a division rival. But in the meeting, in the player personnel meeting, his one line is, Josh Jacobs led the league in rushing, right? So later in the episode, he's talking to John Mara. And just on a quick side note, what I've heard about the Giants over the years is that Mara likes to meddle. That didn't seem like the case in this series. Like, it seemed like he let Shane do what he wanted. He actually came across as a very nice man. Like, I don't know. Like, again, we don't know what we did see and what we didn't see truly, but the owner comes across as a very, very nice man. And the way that he even spoke to a guy that runs the team, has multiple millions of dollars is disgusting to me. Truly, like truly. How can you sit there and tell the owner that it doesn't make sense to franchise him when you just did it the year before? And not only that, Barkley told him several times they'd like to have him back. And then the Tim McDonald guy at the 37-minute mark, he jumps in and he says, if we lose Barkley, who are we? What's our identity? And he never had an answer for that question. Joe Schoen, he never had an answer for that question. What he said is, at the 37-minute mark, he says, I lost 10 years off my life dealing with Barkley. But at the 5:40 mark, my job is to do what's best for the franchise. So what you told me is, because he stressed you out, you didn't do what's best for the franchise. And you went directly against what the owner said. It's all in the film.
Yeah.
It's all in the film. How can you say you've done what's best for the franchise when your answer to a guy saying, what's our identity if we lose Barkley? Well, I lost 10 years off my life dealing with the Asian. Well, how's that what's best for the franchise? But nobody's going at Joe Schoen. Nobody has the balls to go at Joe Schoen. Nobody has the balls.
I mean, I can tell you when he was first brought in, like, Giants fans, they were like, oh, he's this, this from the Buffalo brainchild, you get Dable.
I have that written down. Can I cut you off?
Yes, go for it.
At the 30-minute mark, it's at the Senior Bowl. He's talking to Dan Morgan. Dan Morgan made a complete ass of himself.
Oh, yeah.
Dan Morgan somehow humiliated himself worse than Shane.
Looks even worse.
I've never seen a guy bid against himself worse. I've never seen a guy bid against himself worse. And again, they were in those player personnel meetings. It was obvious they wanted Burns. It was obvious they wanted Burns before they even spoke to Morgan. And he was going to ask him about Burns. He was totally going to ask him about Burns before Morgan even brought him up.
You guys want to move up to 6 from 33? No?
I'm going 8.
Just checking. Never hurts to ask. Bean, you want to come up to 6? Where are you? You can't afford a top 10 pick.
Can't afford a pick. You want to give us COVID ones for Burns?
Ooh.
That sounded an awful lot like the Panthers just let the Giants know that pass rusher extraordinaire Brian Burns is available.
There's Burns being an absolute factor, just wins off the ball.
Let's look at that little dip. That's so beautiful to change your levels and make yourself from a big, tall target to a tiny, little, small target.
You want to give us COVID ones for Burns?
No. I mean, yes, but...
Or 1 and something.
Okay. You're heading in the right direction.
But he fell right into the trap, of course, because who's training these fucking Buffalo people? Who's training them? Do we have an answer for that? Who's training these people how to negotiate?
I don't think we have any.
Because all he did was, do we 2-1s for Burns? He immediately came off the price in 5 seconds.
And I think that's what the Rams were ready to give up for him like a couple of years ago.
Well, I know that. And I know that Morgan wasn't in charge when they turned the Rams trade down. But if you're negotiating this correctly, the first thing you say is he's not available.
But they're buddies, you know. They go fishing together.
Oh, sure.
They have, their kids go to school together, whatever it is, you know. Like,
unbelievable. The first thing he should have said is, and again, we even saw footage of it. He was haggling over a 7th round pick, is what they were haggling over. A 7th round pick they were haggling over. And I think this is episode 3 or something. I mean, they were sitting in their office for 8 hours watching free agents go off the board. He had no pivot. He had no pivot. He had no backup plan. If he didn't get Burns, he had no backup plan.
Yep.
We saw it on the camera.
It's all there.
He literally sat in his office and he's like, this is taking up a lot of time and thoughts. It's like, nobody's forcing you to go down this road.
He should know which road to go down. And
which road he should have went down. And I have all this written down. At the 20-minute mark, they're talking about how Dexter Lawrence, his best friend's Christian Wilkins. You have an automatic recruiter in the building to go get him. And the cap went up. So you clearly had no problem allocating big resources to an offensive lineman. Had no problem doing that. There's no foresight in this front office. There's no second order thinking in this front office. There's no mapping of how the team building works. There is no team building in this front office. It's let's collect talent. There's no team building. How can you sit there when your best defensive player comes up to you and say, my best friend's Christian Wilkins, I'd love to have him, and he's willing to come here. And then you said, nah, we're not going to do that.
Could have saved a 2nd round pick to get someone that could have really helped them.
Could have saved the 2nd round pick. And how about the 6 hours you were sitting in your office with no pivot, with free agents coming off the board? And he's sitting there. And do you see him? He's sitting there and he's like, well, we're waiting on an answer from Dan. Everybody's sitting there. Nobody's saying a fucking word. They're all fucking jerking each other off. Oh.
You're doing a great job, Joe. You're doing a great job.
They had no pivot. Absolutely no pivot. And I want to get into that stuff later. I try to go in order, but you can't sit here and tell me your team is better by giving up draft picks for Burns when he could have just had Wilkins and kept your 2. And later it was exposed that guys that you wanted could have been available at pick 39 and they went up just right before you picked. But we'll get there.
Yes.
We'll get there. But at the 20-minute mark, the player personnel guy, Rossetti, he basically says that Wilkins is not a factor on 3rd down. That Wilkins is – we saw it. Rossetti, he says I'm going to send this to you because I know I can find it. Wilkins is not a factor on 3rd down, which is factually incorrect. He's one of the best left tackles in football. I'm going to send this to you.
I'll throw this up
because he's factually incorrect. And there's no way I would have been able to keep my mouth shut. And actually, what's just crazy is he actually sounded like the smartest guy in the building, even though he was a total idiot.
Yes.
Somehow he was the smartest guy in the building, running all the meetings. You notice Shane didn't run the meetings. It was Rossetti running the player personnel meetings. And he's bringing up something that's factually incorrect. And nobody said a word.
Christian, same thing. This is Dexter's best friend. You know, I don't think he's a difference-making pass rusher on 3rd down, which is what we need opposite Dex. But a really good football player will do well for himself.
Dex texted me to text me about him the other day.
Who did?
Dexter asked what we thought, so.
Yeah, they're really close. Obviously, Leo.
Plenty to ponder.
Sports Info Solutions, they got the number. There you go. He is 2nd on the list in terms of interior defensive linemen on 3rd down pressures.
You can't make it up sometimes.
And this is the smartest guy in the building. I don't know if you thought that way. Just go from what I've seen in the episodes. That Rossetti guy was easily the smartest guy in the building.
And he's an idiot.
And he's actually incorrect. How's that possible? And by the way, the leader, the GM, he's saying nothing. Not a word during these player personnel meetings. The player personnel director is running the meeting. Which if I'm a GM, that an assistant is not running my meeting.
The buck
But-
stops at the GM, right? Isn't that what it's supposed to be?
You would think the GM comes in with a plan and he says, look, this is the options we're considering. If we'd love to have option A. If option A falls through, we would love to have option B. If option B falls through, we'd love to have option C. That's not how that meeting went. That meeting went, Chris, you run the meeting, and we have no pivot plan. We have absolutely no backup. This is what we want to do, and if it doesn't work out, we're fucked.
It's comical.
Which some of the moves that they were all in on, like Burns, it happened for him. But you can't convince me. You cannot convince me that keeping your second round pick wouldn't have been a better alternative than just getting Wilkins. Which apparently he's not a factor on third down, so they didn't want him.
Right. And they are admitting on camera that they just don't look at the numbers and they don't do any research.
Well,
and it's just
the numbers, which is more fascinating. It seems like he's analytical. That's all he looks at. All he does is look at his chart. He specifically mentions his chart several times where he says, can't sign a 27-year-old running back. Analytics say we can't do that. But Devin Singletary's 27.
I want to hear what you have next, Trey, because this is just like this is
30-minute mark right after the player personnel meeting. They're announcing their new defensive coordinator hire, which, by the way,
Shane,
they lost Wink Martindale, who's actually good at his job. He left because of this dysfunction in the front office and all the other bullshit. So they're going over the new defensive coordinator hire. Shane Bowen's the new DC, and I don't know how to say this other than it's totally delusional the way they just went about this hire. Like totally delusional. First, they start out by like Brian Daboll, he's looking at his sheet and he's saying, oh, they ranked this in stopping the run. They ranked this and this. He's bringing up all these stats about Shane Bowen's defense. Meanwhile, Mike Vrabel's a defensive coach. That's Mike Vrabel's defense. Don't sit here and tell me that his assistant is in charge of getting the Titans defense to play well. Like, don't sit here and tell me that. And you don't have Jeffrey Simmons.
Right.
Like, you don't have Jeffrey Simmons. Like the numbers that he's performing with Tennessee are totally irrelevant to what he'll do with your team because you don't have the same players. And 24-50-minute mark, Joe Schoen, he says, quote, the clearer they can define what exactly they're looking for, the easier it is for us to find. Fuck that. That's not how you run a football team. So what you have admitted is that you are a subcontractor in terms of getting a defensive coordinator. That in terms of you running a program, you don't have one. That in terms of running a defense, it is upon whoever we hire. And in terms of what we want from a defense, we don't have a plan. We have no absolutely structure of organization. We have no definition for what we want in a giant. The logo is supposed to represent what we want in a player. And you're a Yankee fan, so you actually know this, or I think you should know this. Andy Martino wrote a book. I think it was called The Yankee Way, right?
Yes.
And it basically goes over how George Steinbrenner, he defined what he wants a Yankee first baseman to look like, a Yankee second baseman to look like, a Yankee third baseman to look like. He has a defined characteristics of what he wants in terms of every single position. They do not have that. They just openly admitted they don't have that. Because what happens if, let's say, Shane Bowen does well and he gets a head coaching job? So now our whole defense changes. Right? Because you've subcontracted the defense. You have no organization and you have no leadership. None.
Right. And with the Giants especially, they have built this identity.
How can anybody say the clearer they define what they're looking for, the easier it is for us to find? No. How about you tell the defensive coordinator what you want? The logo does not represent the player in this situation. It does not. The defensive coordinator has all the say. And then in that same meeting, Brian Daboll, he asks him, where does Isaiah Simmons fit and does he? How is that not an interview question? You're telling me you hired this guy. without knowing how a player fits in a defense?
There's just no. It's like you said, no
How can
level
you
of
hire
second
someone and
thinking.
not know the answer to that question? But he's really comfortable. He kicks his feet up on the desk. He looks really comfortable. I would have smacked him.
Yeah.
How can you hire someone and not know the answer to that question?
Just it's basic stuff. Like you'd think from our perspective, it's like a pretty like standard type of procedure you could go about doing that. They don't even do that.
It's around the 26, 27 minute mark. He says, where does Isaiah Simmons fit and does he? After he hired him. How do you not know the answer to that question before you hire him? That's what I want to know.
It could have been a 30-second answer like, nope, let's hire him.
It's very obvious that Joe Schoen wasn't even in the interview.
Yeah.
Because Dable told him who the defensive coordinator was going to be.
Like, obviously, Shane is the idiot. I think Dable looked better than Shane, but obviously, I don't know. Dable did not do himself a ton of favors.
I thought Dable looked good in some areas, and I thought he looked really bad in some areas.
Yes.
And this idea that he openly admitted he subcontracted the defense and he's got nothing to do with it is crazy. What happens if Bowen does well and he gets a head coaching job?
Nah.
You're going back to the drawing board and say, well, we don't really know. So whoever we hire, it's up to them. No, that's not a leader. No.
You've seen, guys like Lawrence Taylor wear that uniform and have that logo, and you'd think a guy like him is kind of what represents that organization and that philosophy, but it's clear that's not the case.
Well, all those signs in the building. This is why we lift all them weights. The Parcell stuff. That's a leader.
Yep.
How can you possibly sit there and say, well, if we lose Shane Bowen, we're back to square one in terms of building a defense. You're not running a team. Shane, it goes back to, they basically start the episode with Barkley and the end of the episode with Barkley. And at the 37-minute mark, he says, we can't pay $40 million to hand the ball off. Well, your competitor, Philadelphia, just did that. Your competitor, excuse me, your competitor, Philadelphia, is paying Jalen Hurts more than $40 million to hand the ball off. Baltimore is paying Lamar Jackson more than that to hand the ball off to Derrick Henry. Why can't you pay that? How these are well-run organizations. Philadelphia, they're winning a bunch of games. Baltimore wins a bunch of games. But you say that what they're doing, you can't do. You're just making shit up.
You're just lying to so many people, and you're just openly you're allowing yourself to look like an idiot.
This franchise has 36% win percentage since Tom Coughlin left. 36% win percentage. You're not responsible for any success. None. You're responsible for zero success. How do you have the audacity to say we can't pay $40 million to hand the ball off when several teams do? Several good teams do.
Successful teams.
But nobody has that follow-up question for him.
I don't know if people are too scared or just not smart enough to. I don't know what it is. Like,
episode 2 goes right into the cap's higher than expected. And then, again, nobody asked him why we can't sign Barkley back. Nobody asked him that. So the salary cap apparently doesn't change anything. Doesn't change any outlook. Doesn't change any outlook. Then they're going over these scouting meetings. They're basically bringing in all the road scouts, all the people that followed the college guys throughout the year on the road. And there's this one guy, he basically says, Caleb didn't speak to the media after the UCLA game, and they started 5-0, and then their season went off the rails. Explain to me why that's relevant in terms of scouting. Explain to me why any of that information is relevant to where the team is and where the team's going. So you followed Caleb Williams around that whole year, and your line is, Well, he didn't speak to the media. We don't know about his character. The team started out strong but faded down the stretch. You're not evaluating the quarterback. You have no clue.
They're trying to
no fucking clue.
create a narrative.
So that's all they do. They sound like random fans.
They sound like the idiots on TV that we see all the time.
Right. 100%. Then the episode continues. They basically show the PR team helping him with the combine interviews, which thank God. Thank God he's got a PR team helping him, because Robert Saleh needs that. Robert Saleh needs a PR team to help him. So thank God the Giants have somebody that's babysitting. And it's kind of laughable that they showed it, but not really. Like, we know you only pass the combine interviews because you have a PR team. But when the cameras are on and you're just supposed to be doing your job, you have no clue, right? That's how this goes. Anybody else notice that? The PR team?
They were, you know, you got to think, it's like you said, they're probably scrambling around the clock. Imagine like what's not here. Like they probably, you know, they're working overtime for these guys.
That PR team deserves a fucking raise, because they actually got him to sound kind of competent.
Yeah.
I mean, he was dodging every question, but that's better than what he would have otherwise did. Now, they're at the combine, and Brian Daboll, this is where I'll give him credit. Before I didn't give him credit. He clearly did very well interviewing the quarterbacks.
Oh, yeah, all three, yeah.
Very well interviewing the quarterbacks. Absolutely no complaints there. But it continues. The episode continues, and they're interviewing Malik Neighbors. And he admitted that he's going to be a problem if he doesn't get the ball. But you have no ability to get him the ball.
And how do you handle not being involved early in the game?
How do I handle it?
Yeah.
I handle it pretty tough, especially, you know, during the week.
That's what I'm looking for.
Been in the offense, you know, in the week, you know, putting in the work with the one offense, getting a lot of plays, you know, known to be called for me. So if I'm not in those plays and not getting the ball, you know, I'm pretty hard on it.
So this is, again, we saw this on camera. You interviewed Malik Neighbors. He told you flat out that he's a problem if he doesn't get the ball. This all goes back to team building. You have no team building. All you are in is the collection of talent. But you have no ability to get him the ball. So what happens week 5? You're 1-4. You don't think he's going to start bitching? But that's the guy you wanted. And again, I'm not anti Neighbors. I think he'll be a good player. But he was always the wrong pick for them. All they've done is created another Odell. And again, Odell's a very good player. I'm not saying he's not. But the wide receiver position is the last position on your team that you should fix. You've already openly admitted your offensive line's a problem. You've drafted 0 offensive linemen, and you drafted a receiver who openly admitted during the combine interviews he's going to be a problem. Nobody said anything though.
Right. Nobody
said anything. They liked them more afterwards, actually. Could you tell that?
Yeah.
They liked them more after he admitted he was going to be a problem.
What did he say? He was like, I hate losing more than I love winning. Well, sorry, Malik.
I don't think that was even the line. I think the line that got me was Daboll was asked him, how do you handle not being involved early in a game? And he openly admitted, it's tough on me. I don't like it.
It's a perfectly fine answer in my book for a receiver, but
sure.
You know,
sure, but you have no ability to get him the ball.
Yeah. Like, where's this, you know?
And not only that, if you had Barkley, maybe you did have an ability to get him the ball, because now you got 2 guys to worry about. But now every team knows they're doubling Neighbors. Make everybody else beat you. Every team's going to do that. Every team's going to do that this year. But if you had Barkley and you're doubling the receiver, now there's maybe some more open running lanes, and maybe Barkley gets going, and now you maybe can't have as much attention on Neighbors. Because if you're stacking the box against Barkley, now maybe Neighbors is open. But now you've lost that threat.
Trey, that's too smart. You can't tell them that's too smart. Like that's too far ahead for them to even recognize.
Well, there's no second order thinking in his organization. None. And there was another scene where I think it was the wide receiver coach. He was really trying to get Harrison to bash Kyle McCord. He was really trying to get Harrison to bash Kyle McCord, and he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it. And then afterwards, he said, we like neighbors. He's got more of a dog in him. By saying that he's going to be a problem, that makes him more of a dog. If both players were on the board, it was clear and obvious that they were going to pick neighbors.
Yeah, he was their guy. Yeah.
We'll find out who's right about that, but I think anybody is delusional if you think they're on the same tier. I don't believe that. We'll find out. I don't believe that Neighbors is on the same tier as Harrison. We'll find out.
I agree.
But their reasoning as well, we like him more because he admitted he's going to be a problem if he doesn't get the ball is fucking insane.
It's alarming. Like, and the whole kind of subplot to all this is like, they didn't want to say it, but like they are ready to kiss Daniel Jones goodbye in next year and admit how bad that contract goes. But that's for something else. I think that's for.
I'm glad you brought up Daniel Jones because I have this on the list and it's not really tied into a specific episode because they say a lot of things about Daniel Jones, but they're
walking on eggshells.
Right. They're walking on eggshells the whole time. But this one does not get brought up. And my question is, this would have been my question to Joe Schoen. So we don't have the money to sign Saquon Barkley, despite the fact that the cap went up $30 million. And you did the exact same thing last year, but now we can't do that. Here's my follow-up question. Why didn't nobody go after Daniel Jones for some of his money? At no point in the offseason did they attack Daniel Jones. And I'm not saying you got to attack him, but this is the right way to handle it. Daniel, listen, you haven't been healthy. You're making $40 million a year. We can't sign Saquon Barkley unless you take a little bit of a pay cut. Can you work with us? They didn't do that one time.
No.
They didn't do that one time.
Guys restructure contracts all the time.
Go look this up. Pull this up. Daniel Jones, his percentage of the cap is higher than Jalen Hurts. It's a fact. For this year, Daniel Jones is eating a bigger percentage of the cap than Jalen Hurts, who's in your division, who you let Philadelphia steal from you. It's a fact. At no point in the offseason, no point, did he get on the phone and say, look, Daniel, we're going to lose Barkley if we don't get some of this money back. You can, let's give you a chance to earn it back. Let's give you a chance to earn it because we can restructure this contract.
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts is at 5.31% of the cap.
And boom.
Daniel Jones is at 18.7. You can't win. You can't win. How can you win?
After that season he had in 2022 where there were clear red flags, like obviously by his terrible standards, it was a good year for Daniel Jones.
There's no hindsight bias involved. Anybody can go search this. I'll send it to you if you want. I said they should not pay Daniel Jones.
Right.
No, they did. And they made that decision. And now they can't fix it. But you could have at least tried to fix it. At any point in the offseason, you could have said, listen, can we shave $10 million off of this thing? We'll give it back to you in incentives. Like at any time they could have done that. If you're so worried about losing Barkley and you can't do the same thing that you just did last year, why can't we get some of the money back from Daniel Jones?
Right. And if Jones goes and says no, then you should include that in the video. Let the people see it.
Right.
Right. You know, like, right. If you're showing all this, like, why not?
Right.
I don't know.
At no point did they ever even attempt. They didn't attempt it. It's not like they tried and failed. At no point did they even attempt to get back a singular dollar of Daniel Jones.
It's ridiculous.
And the percentage of the cap, you just saw it. 18.7, 5, 5 point something for Philadelphia. That's the difference right there. And why Philadelphia got Barkley. Because you mismanaged the cap.
It's asinine.
Mean, you could have done 700 different things in terms of getting the money back from Daniel Jones. I mean, whether it be giving him some roster bonuses down the line and say, look, let's shave $10 million off this year. Let's add it on to year 3. If you hit these incentives, we'll give it back. They didn't even try. Nothing.
Jones is in no position to try and argue that bargain, after he was terrible before the injury.
Especially you could have guaranteed him more money that, hey, if you help us this year, we'll guarantee you more in the third year or something. They didn't even try. No attempt.
Just shows you they even know they made that mistake. And
they didn't try to fix it either.
Yeah. That's the worst part.
So to end episode 2, it shows another call with Barkley's agent, with Joe Schoen. Joe Schoen's on the phone again with Barkley's agent. They're having a long conversation. Your job as the general manager is to know what the agent is thinking. I knew the agent had a deal. And a lot of it's hindsight bias now because he obviously had a deal. But I knew he had a deal. I knew he had a deal back then. The fact that he didn't pick up on, well, will you give me your word?
Come on,
bro. Will you give me your word? What are we, 5?
It's not TV. This isn't this, soap opera.
And again, it sounds like they could have gotten a deal done at 12.5 million. Philadelphia gave more than the franchise tag. So at any time, he could have just tagged Barkley and said, well, we have control, so just get a deal done with us. Let's go. He didn't tag him.
It's I just don't know what goes through his head, what kind of thinking skills are
whether it be
those decisions.
Whether it be, look, Philadelphia, you want him so bad, offer us a 3rd-round pick for him. They probably would have did it because they were going to lose Swift to Chicago. And in another episode, Shane goes, Chicago's driving the price up on Barkley. Philadelphia's out. He has no clue. No fucking clue.
I don't know what world he's living in.
Pluto. Episode 3 goes right back into it. Call with Barkley's agent again. They're giving up the numbers. They're passing shit. You can tell the agent's slippery. You can tell he's got another deal. You can tell he's got another deal. And Philadelphia tampers. I'm just going to tell people right now. Philadelphia tampers. They were in contact with a lot of different guys before free agency even opened up. It's why I knew about it. They didn't even use the tag as leverage. They said, we're going to let you test the market. Once you did that, he's gone.
You completely shot yourself in the foot by doing that.
Once you did that, he's gone. And not only once you did that, you're not even going to get a comp pick now because you replaced his free agency pool with Runyon and Illuminor. So now the comp pick disappears. So you really got nothing for Barkley.
And it's just crazy to me thinking about I have a lot of thought, I can't get it out, but just keep going. Yeah.
I don't need a lot of the clips. Can we just play the one where John Mara says, I will lose sleep if Barkley goes to Philadelphia?
I have a tough time sleeping if Saquon goes to Philadelphia. I'll tell you that. As I've told you, just being honest. I've been around enough players. So, but he's the most popular player we have by far.
That one we need to show because the fact that this fucking guy had a smile on his face, he was go happy lucky, he was literally laughing, having the time of his fucking life. And then he did the exact thing that his owner, who is responsible for his job, allowed it to happen. The owner is telling you, if he goes to Philadelphia, I ain't going to be able to sleep at night. And he's laughing about it. He's laughing about it in his face. Look at the smile this fucking guy has. Look at the smile he's got on. I would have choked him. I said, this guy owns the New York Giants. He is responsible for you being employed. He is giving you clear instructions that if they lose the best player on their team, he's not going to be able to sleep at night. And he laughed in his face. That would have been the last straw for me. They would have put me in handcuffs.
Yeah.
Just out of pure respect for the owner. I would have had to.
Right. It's like you said, the way Mara was portrayed, he looked like a decent guy.
He comes across as a very, very nice man. I don't know how else to say it.
And Joe Schoen just laughs in his face.
if that had been me, he would have gotten fired on the spot. I wouldn't have been able to watch him laugh in my face. I don't know. And then later in the episode, basically goes and shows how stressed the guy is. Like he's losing his fucking mind over half this shit. And not only that, like his main target is Jermaine Illuminor. Like they picked up the Raider line. Go ask Chickster if the Raider line.
They got Carmen Brasillo and all his guys in there. They have Van Rotten now. Like
we have Van Rotten and Illuminor. The Raider line wasn't good enough last year.
That's why Brasillo got fired.
The Raider line wasn't good enough last year. You wanted the Raider line. And not only that, your plan was to play Illuminor guard when he's clearly a tackle. Well, Evan Neal's the tackle.
Right. And Evan Neal.
How about we figure out how to make Evan Neal a good player before we just name him a starter?
Talk about a disaster. Evan Neal, one of many disasters they've got going on.
And how can you possibly say Daniel Jones did not have a chance because our line's not good enough? And then your answer is we draft 0 offensive linemen and pick up Jermaine Illuminor. How's that the answer?
John Runyon's supposed to be the answer now. Like
I like Runyon. I like Runyon. But they clearly overpaid him.
Yes.
Huge overpay.
Definitely.
And because they overpaid him, it wiped out the comp pick for Barkley.
Yep.
So they really gave up a 3rd-round pick for Runyon.
Do you care at all about the McKinney stuff, or?
I wouldn't say that I wouldn't not care about it. They didn't really show a ton.
Yeah.
It felt like they were out of the bidding before it felt like they never were even in the race for McKinney.
Right.
Which I get it. He made a lot of money. But they were never in the race. But again, that goes back to the Burns thing. You could have signed 4 players for what you gave Burns.
Right. Oh yeah.
Burns got what, $28 million a year?
Something 5 years and something close to 150. Yeah.
You could have gotten Barkley and 3 more guys. All right, episode 4. The first note that I have is basically it has nothing to do with the episode. It just popped in my head. He's gonna get fired. He's gonna get fired. And if I was running his PR campaign right now, I would say you have to go in and defend your job and say, we didn't pick up the 5th-year option on Daniel Jones because we thought he wasn't good enough. And then we fell into the politics and had to give him the deal. That's his only defense right now. His only defense right now is we didn't pick up the 5th year on Daniel Jones. And because he played well and we saved him, we shouldn't get punished for it. That's his only defense right now.
Just be honest. At least be honest. Like, right? If nothing else, you can be stupid, but if you can be honest, that helps, right?
And then later in the episode, they're showing us pro day footage of Theo Johnson and Neighbors and all that stuff. It was pretty obvious they wanted Neighbors the whole time. Yep. But now I want to get to the scene with Brandon Brown. Can we get to the stuff with Brandon Brown? Because in the first episode, this guy mansplains to us about contracts, about how you don't want to overpay. And now he's mansplaining to us of, well, we don't want to be picking high. And then immediately it goes into a scene where John Mara walks into
I've got it. Yeah.
And he talks to him about how Ernie Accorsi was very adamant about, well, Eli Manning, he's going to be better in New York because his supporting cast at Ole Miss wasn't good enough, but he was successful in the SEC. Basically talking about why Ernie made the pick that he did. He's basically asking Brandon Brown, what do you think? What do you think we should do this year? Because in the scene, Mara openly admits that he's very nervous about this draft coming up. He openly admits this isn't a normal year. He's very nervous because what happens in this draft is going to impact a lot of things down the road, which is a very fair assessment. Basically, he openly admits we're not in a good spot right now. He's telling the assistant GM, we're not in a good spot right now. I'm very nervous about what's going on. What do you think should happen? And at no point does Brandon Brown give any insight on what he thinks the team should do. He basically asked the owner, well, how did it go with Eli? Like at no point does he say, well, I think we should go down and do X, Y, and Z. I think, if this quarterback is there, why don't we go up and grab? Like, he never at any point provides any insight. He wants to mansplain to you about how contracts works. He wants to mansplain to you about, we don't like to be picking this high in the draft. No shit, buddy. No shit, you don't want to be losing games. Like, what does that guy bring to the table? Does anybody have any idea what this Brandon Brown guy brings to the table? If I'm running a team, I want my assistant GM to have something, whether it be an old guy who used to do it, who was in the business for a long time, or a young guy who's up and coming that's got a lot. This guy, Brandon Brown, he's got nothing to add.
No.
He's got nothing to add.
No analysis. Nothing. Like you said, no planning, no nothing.
I mean, if you just go and put on every single scene that Brandon Brown guy is in, it's mansplaining to you about, we don't want to be paying sirloin prices for filet mignon. We know that. We're very aware that you want to
5-year-old knows that.
Like, we're very aware that we don't want to be losing games so that we're not picking high. We're very aware of that. What do you have to bring to the table? It's nothing. Dayball, clearly, very much like Jaden Daniels. And he kind of sort of he liked Drake May. He would have been okay with Drake May. But he very, very, very much wanted Jaden Daniels. That was obvious in the film.
Absolutely.
What Giants fans should remember, and we'll see how all this stuff turns out. People should remember their ability to evaluate this quarterback class, whether they got one or not. Do you trust, as a Giants fan, the team's ability to scout the players that are actually in the draft? Because you could be picking at a different spot. Things can go a certain way. It is very obvious that they wanted Jaden Daniels. Very obvious. And I think they may have even picked him with the first pick. I don't know that for sure.
Yeah.
But it's very obvious they wanted Jaden Daniels. If Jaden Daniels sucks, just know that your team really wanted him.
Okay, let's cut to the chase. What's up? Would you want to be here? Would you want to be here? Yeah. Legit? Yeah. You would want to be the quarterback for the New York Giants? Yeah. Okay, that's important to me. You've got to want to be here too. You've got to want to be part of this thing. And you'd feel good about being here. I feel good. Okay, that's number one. Number two, did you get my plays?
Yeah, I'm gonna draw on for you in your office.
Okay, we'll go to my office.
Daniels, have you guys seen enough that you would trade up for him?
Daniels?
Yeah.
I would. Yes.
And this goes to the draft day.
Yes.
And this is enormous because it starts with Joe Schoen talking to the owner, John Mara, and he says, he's going like, hey, we'd like to trade up for a quarterback, basically, but we're going to throw some politics behind it and say, well, we're not willing to give up X, Y, and Z. So if you're willing to take our deal, like, this is the line that really bothers me. He says, this is consuming a lot of my time and thoughts. How's that possible?
Like, you can't work long hours? You can't, work under pressure? Like, is that what
This is the quote. This is consuming a lot of my time and thoughts. How's that possible? There is like a 45-day window between the combine and the draft. You're only required to make one pick in the first round. And then it cuts off. There's a whole new day. There's a whole new day. So for 45 days, you've been basically admitting you've been dreaming up about this quarterback trade up. You've been dreaming of it. You've been dreaming of this. It's consuming a lot of my time and thoughts. There's so many problems I have with this. Number one, New England was never moving out.
Nope.
New England was never moving out. So how can you sit there and say it's consuming a lot of your time when everybody with a brain knew that New England was perfectly happy with getting their quarterback because they had no alternative. Like New England had no alternative.
Yep.
So if you were gonna get up to New England's spot, you had to offer them the house.
What's up, buddy?
So what's going on? You guys still listening, or you guys make a decision? What are you thinking?
I think we're pretty heavy leaning that are sitting here thinking.
Okay.
But if you offer us like 1, 2, 3 this year, 1, 2 next, I mean, you know, exaggerate.
So, but I mean, it's gonna be something crazy like that.
It would probably have to be pretty significant.
Okay, so like a 1 this year, or not that obviously it'd be 6 this year, a 1 next year, and then something more this year is not gonna do it. It's got to be multiples in 25.
Just we're in this situation where we just probably could sit and pick a quarterback, you know.
Okay.
And since you were willing to never do that, how can that possibly take up all of your time?
It's like a.
How's it possible? How is it possible that it's consuming a lot of your time and thoughts when you know, or maybe he doesn't know, maybe he's not even smart enough to realize this. New England was always going to be perfectly fine sitting there taking whoever the quarterback was. How do you not know that?
It's laughable.
And then he gets on the phone with Elliott Wolf. He tells the owner about how this is stressing him out, how it's taking up all of his time. And the first thing he says to Elliott Wolf is, well, I've been watching Dr. Phil and get on with it. Right? Get on with it.
Yeah.
The first thing he does, he calls Elliott Wolf and says, well, maybe Dr. Phil should get. But you're telling your owner you're all stressed out and you don't have any fucking time.
He's had nothing but time.
He's got nothing but time. He sat there for 6 hours and had no pivot to Brian Burns. His entire staff was circling around him in the office. They're all sitting there with their thumbs up their ass. He's got all the time in the world. He sat there for 6 hours and waited for a phone call from Dan Morgan. But he's got no time.
I think part of it is like, I think they just want us to feel bad. Maybe they're trying to look like the victim here. Try to make us feel bad for them for how bad they are at their jobs. I don't know.
And then before the draft, they're going over these trade down scenarios. So they're going to the trade up scenarios. He's calling all these people, getting deals in place, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I guess credit to him for knowing that Harrison was going to go to the Cardinals. Credit to him for knowing that the Chargers were probably going to take an offensive tackle. But did anybody notice this? He was going to get finagled by the Bears. Did anybody notice that? Because he had a deal with Ryan Poles, and he basically said, well, the Bears are going to come up for a tackle, and we can get a third and a fourth, and we give back a fifth. And then still get O'Dunes. But O'Dunes is the guy the Bears wanted the whole time.
Yep.
Did anybody notice that? So if Neighbors was off the board, which if the Chargers weren't picking fifth, maybe the Chargers would have traded down and somebody sniped Neighbors from them. They then would have missed out on all the receivers, which probably would have been a good thing.
Yes, a blessing in disguise for that.
Probably would have been a great thing. But did anybody notice this? At no point were they ever considering taking an offensive lineman. There was no offensive lineman on their board for the first round. None. There was never a scenario, never one scenario where they were going to move down and get an offensive lineman. They were going to move down and get O'Dunes, who would have been gone with the trade that they had in place with the Bears. How's that possible?
I mean, there's a chance Joe All could have fallen into their lap and they still would have said no. And
correct.
There's a legit chance.
They had no offensive. There was no plan for an offensive lineman in the first round. There was never a plan for which, again, you can pick it however you want. I think Neighbors is going to be a good player. It would have been my pick. So be it. But there was no pivot. They had no backup plan. And their backup plan would have fucking fired right in their face. Did anybody notice that? Because
that's their plan B. That's their
again, it goes back to they did not have to show that on camera. He committed a heinous sin. I would have covered that up. Again, that's just me. But he did not do that. Everybody saw it. And here's another question. It's clear and obvious that Poles was looking to move up. Poles was looking to move up for O'Dunes the whole time. And Joe Douglas was looking to move up for O'Dunes.
Yep.
Ballard was looking to move up. I don't know who Ballard wanted. He may have taken Latu anyway. I don't know. But Ballard was also looking to move up. This doesn't have anything to do with the Giants, but here's the question that I have, just factoring in all of this. The Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons had the 8th pick. The Atlanta Falcons had the 8th pick. The Bears had the 9th pick. Poles was calling everybody. He wanted O'Dunes. He wanted O'Dunes. He was calling everybody. Why didn't the Falcons move down one spot?
Got some good stuff.
Who was sniping them on Penix? Were the Bears going to snipe them on Penix after taking Caleb Williams?
Well, I guess we can say, Trey, with people like Dan Morgan and all those people in the Falcons organization, they're somehow dumber people in the NFL than Joe Schoen and Brandon
I just
Brown.
wanted to bring that up really quickly because we have to, with all this information that they showed us, Poles wanting to move up, Ballard wanting to move up, Joe Douglas wanting to move up. And again, they all had different targets, but I think Douglas really wanted O'Dunes. And it's obvious now that Poles wanted O'Dunes.
Yep.
Atlanta had the 8th pick. And they were going to take Penix, which I wouldn't have been my pick, but let's just say they're in the right. Let's just say they're in the right and Penix was their pick. Why didn't you take Poles' phone call and just take whatever their offer was to move down one spot?
Could have gotten a nice.
Because the Bears weren't taking Penix. They had already taken a quarterback.
Really makes
Nobody has an answer for any of this stuff. That's what I want to know.
No accountability and no critical thinking.
Laughable. And then when Ballard calls Shane on the phone, he says, we'll think about it. But immediately, he tells his staffers that we're not moving back that far. Well, why'd you lie to him on the phone?
As the board goes and the players get drafted, you've been through a million different scenarios. You have your plan.
New York has correctly predicted the first 5 picks. The Giants are perfectly positioned. But there's no hurry. Joe Schoen knows other teams might pay plenty to move up to 6.
We're going to take our time. All right, hold on. Wait and see if the phone rings.
So 5 minutes now left on the clock for the Giants, who did not trade up for a quarterback, or could not trade up for a quarterback, or would not trade up for a quarterback.
Who's that?
Colts. It's Chris Ballard with the Colts. How you doing, man?
I'm good. You guys looking to come up? 15, 46 next year's too. Okay, we'll let you know. Okay, thanks, Chris. All right, bye. That's too far. I'm not going back. Joe Douglas is calling home. Hello? Yeah, I think we're gonna pick. What are you thinking? Nick. Okay. Yeah, no, I think we're gonna stay.
Now it gets really interesting because the Giants did try to trade up to number 3 to take.
He lied to him on the phone.
And everyone can see that now, including Ballard.
Yeah. He lied to him on the phone. Like, how do you even show that scene?
Who in the Giants thought it was okay to show that scene? That's who I want to know.
And he's the one, my communication's great. He's the one bragging about how his communication is so great and then lied to Ballard on the phone. If you were never considering the offer, why did you say, we'll think about it? And here's the other crazy thing. They went into draft day thinking Waller was on the team.
Oh my gosh.
Did anybody else notice that? They went into draft day thinking Waller was on the team. Everybody knew with a brain that he was done.
As soon as he starts releasing music, it doesn't occur to them.
There was no scenario where Waller was playing. They thought he was on the team. Like, he has no clue what's going on. He didn't know Philadelphia was involved. He thought Waller was on the team. They're hiring defensive coordinators without ever having a plan in place.
Just lying to other. Imagine who else Shane must have lied to on the phone besides Ballard.
Who knows? Who knows? But here's the real problem I have with their draft day. Because anybody can pick somebody good in the first round. I'm going to say this again. Neighbors will probably turn out all right. I'm not saying Neighbors is going to suck. There's a lot of teams that they pick guys in the first round and they don't pick up their 5th-year option. I feel okay saying that they'll probably pick up Neighbors' 5th-year option. I'm not saying that that's a blown pick. I'm not. But where GMs really make their money is by nailing the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th round picks. When you get a Nakua in the 5th round, that changes everything.
Yep.
When you get Kelsey in the 3rd round, those are the picks that change the trajectory of your franchise. You got to hit on those picks. Those are your moneymaker picks if you're a GM. In the 2nd round, we now have evidence that with pick 39, they were clearly targeting Kool-Aid McKinstry and Kamari Lassiter. They very much wanted Kool-Aid McKinstry and Kamari Lassiter, who were both available at pick 39. But you traded pick 39. But he traded pick 39. And then, can you pull up the draft board? I don't think I have it.
Yes.
That would help. I think Kool-Aid goes to pick 41 and then Lassiter pick 42. I could be wrong about that. But I want to see the board. But we have evidence that his whole plan going into the 2nd round, he's speaking to the owner. Yep, there we go. Okay.
McKinstry and Lassiter.
Right. So pick 39 was theirs. That is their original pick. He spent the whole morning going into the 2nd round talking about how he wants McKinstry or Lassiter. And again, if both were available at pick 39, I don't know who they would have taken. I like both players. I'm not saying he's wrong about the evaluation there. But if you really wanted a corner, why did you trade pick 39?
End up with Tyler Nubin.
And they needed a safety because they lost McKinney. I'm not even talking about that. Maybe we can edit this in. But the entire focus of their 2nd round is, in an ideal world, they want Kool-Aid or Lassiter. And both players were available at pick 39. But you gave away pick 39. And then because you didn't get a corner in the 2nd round, you reached for Andrew Phillips, who's really only a nickel corner.
Mm-hmm.
And if he turns into Avonte Maddox, that's probably your best case scenario. But you could have actually gotten a real outside corner. And Lassiter's kind of an inside corner. Kool-Aid plays a lot of zone. Don't want to get into the nitty-gritty. You admitted that your 2 targets that you wanted could have been yours, but you traded the pick away. You didn't just trade the pick away. You traded the pick away months ago.
It's like just no team planning. None. No steps
None.
ahead. There's no plan.
None.
Here's our 5-year plan. Like that. They don't even have a 6-month plan.
They don't have one. They're in the collection business. They're not in the team building business. Just like he says, well, we can't sign a 27-year-old running back. Well, why'd you sign Singletary? He's 27.
Should have just been honest and just say, we think he's injury prone. We don't think he's worth it. They could have used whatever excuse in the book, but instead they try to be sneaky and slimy. And
then the last scene that who knows, maybe we can edit some of this in. I don't know. But they're at the draft. They're like, the draft is done. They're at this bar. It's all closed down. Shane's talking to people, and they kind of cut the scene off a little bit early because they don't want to totally burn him. But Shane is speaking to one of the people in the front office, and he says, we didn't get any offensive linemen. After you said Daniel Jones doesn't have a fighting chance because our line's not good enough. And you went the whole draft and didn't pick one. Now, if
make it
they
make
kept pick
sense.
39, maybe they could have taken a corner in the second round and then taken a offensive lineman in the third round. But since they missed on the corner that they traded the pick away, there goes another offensive lineman.
It's just
I don't have much else to add.
It's just an exercise in failure, is what it is.
It's repulsive to me. Like I was screaming at my TV the whole time. I don't want to even know what wasn't in the episodes. I can't imagine. I truly can't imagine. And this idea that he said the number one problem is offensive line and then didn't take one. Like it's one thing to spend money in free agency on the offensive line, but if you want to actually build a sustainable offensive line, you have to pick them in the draft. Like,
yeah,
Andrew Thomas was the draft pick. Tristan Wirfs was the draft pick. Like, and then he didn't pick Andrew Thomas. That was a Gettleman.
That was a Gettleman pick.
But what you can't say you're committed to building an offensive line and then pick 0 offensive linemen.
They're not moving towards anything.
Like, you can't say that. And by the way, if they lose any of their like if Runyon goes down for the year or John Michael Schmitz goes down for the year, they didn't pick anybody to like they have no depth on the offensive line.
So it's probably going to be another.
Like if Andrew Thomas goes down, they like again. I'm not saying left tackles. Left tackles don't grow on trees, but you have no answer. Like you don't even have a replacement to replace the replacement with.
Yeah, like it's. I want to say it's funny, but it's my team, so it's going to be brutal.
Again, my overall takeaways. The owner, Mara, comes across as a very nice man. I've heard that he's meddled in the past. It doesn't seem like that's the case. Maybe they cut that stuff from the episode, but it really feels like he let Shane kind of run the situation. My thoughts on Shane, I don't want, like, he seems like a happy wanderer, but a clueless wanderer that really, like,
he doesn't have a clue.
He comes across as very ignorant when he laughed in the owner's face. Like, the conversations he has with Mara, very uncomfortable. Like, I don't know how to interpret that any other way.
I don't know how he hasn't been fired yet.
The assistant GM, he brings absolutely nothing to the table. The player personnel guy, while he definitely tries, and you can definitely see that he at least is a football person, like, to sit there and say Christian Wilkins isn't a factor on third down, I don't know. I don't know. And then credit to the McDonald guy, who at least said, "Who are we? What's our identity?" At least somebody voiced their opinion. It didn't go very far. And then on draft day, everybody let Shane pet their bellies and say, "You good with this?" Oh, nobody said a fucking word. Anybody notice that when they're making their picks? Nobody had an ounce of courage to say, "I don't like that pick." Not an ounce of courage.
Just complacency.
And Dayball, I'll say, it seemed like, I'm not going to say he's a bad coach because it clearly comes across that he knows some football. But he clearly subcontracted the defense. And man, like, you're a little too comfortable, buddy. Like, get your feet off the fucking desk. Like, that would have drove me fucking insane. Like, him plopping up the feet on the desk. No. We would have had a fucking problem. So that's all I really got.
Man, I'm with you, Trey. It was something.
Do the best you can to edit this stuff in.
Yeah. I'll have it,
Maybe people will think I crossed the line. All I'm trying to say is the truth. And the truth of the matter is there's no way anybody can watch this and say, yep, that team knows what they're doing. No way.
Yeah.
No way. And I'll bet you this. I bet my fucking life I could run a team better than that.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, I've always said I definitely can do this. I'm 1,000% more confident now. Because there is an absence of leadership. Just from a pure leadership perspective, they don't have one.